Hello and welcome to today's product demo webinar, Managing Compliance Across Borders, How to Drive Alignment Between Global and Local Corporate Policies. I'm Emma Skinner and I'm going to take you through the first couple of slides and introduce you to Ted, who is running today's product demo webinar. We'll just wait a little bit longer just to see if anyone else is joining us today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them below in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end of today's session. I'm just going to repeat what I said a minute ago. Welcome everyone to today's product demo webinar, Managing Compliance Across Borders, How to Drive Alignment Between Local and Global Corporate Policies. So we're just going to get straight into it. Today's agenda, the demo webinar will be roughly 20 minutes and then we will go into a Q&A for 10 minutes at the end. So as mentioned, any questions, please feel free to pop them below and we will answer them at the end of the session. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Ted, who will be running today's demo webinar. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers, Emma. So, as Emma suggested, my name is Ted Murray. I work in the commercial team here at Clausematch and helping legal, compliance, governance, regulatory teams to better align local and group policies to effectively scale their compliance programs. So, maybe to set the scene from the outset to understand why the tools at the moment don't work. So, if you go to the next slide, please, Emma. It's no hiding the fact that moving into new markets, new products, it's very difficult. Now, that's for a few reasons, but typically from when people come to us at Clausematch, they say that when it comes to moving into doing this, it's used with Microsoft Office or with Google Workspace. Now, we use these internally as well, but we love them, but they weren't made with compliance and risk and legal functions in mind, leading to a lot of challenges like collaborating across different systems like email workflows, track changes, and the like, making a lot of time-consuming tasks, no accountability of roles. So who's currently got the policy, who's reviewing it, no accountability of roles. Thirdly, not being able to find the right versions of policies and also assessing the impact of when one policy is changed, how does that impact downstream and upstream other related documents? Now, this leads on to a number of different risks. So governance, capacity, regulatory, and conduct. So firstly, governance, different teams across and different geographies, they tend to have different approaches to review cycles. As a result, there's a lack of standardization across the board. From a capacity perspective, because as I mentioned, it's quite time consuming to draft, review and approve policies using SharePoint or Google Workspace. It takes up a lot of time, meaning that sometimes compliance can lead to a few delays, and we don't want that. We want growth to be compliance led. And from a regulatory perspective, if you're not able to prove traceability from local to group policies and to regulations, then you're not going to be put in good stead with new regulators in those new jurisdictions. And then from a conduct perspective, risk appetites and attitudes, they do tend to change across different markets, different jurisdictions. So it's important that those are best aligned with the group expectations. And obviously, as headcounts grow, you're also that risk window is going to be exacerbated. Now, I want to talk through just briefly before getting into the demo, how Clausematch actually solves these issues. So there's two modules that we use to cover this. On the left-hand side, we have the policy management module. On the right-hand side, we have the policy portal module. Policy management, this is where your pre-published documents go. And on the right-hand side, that's where your published documents go. Policy management, that's the engine room where you draft, review, approve policies. And then policy portal, that's where you create attestations for employees and also measure engagement and adherence overall. But without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and get into how this works in real time. So let me just share my screen. Cool. So let me just make the window smaller on the right. So this is the login page. So Clausematch is like most SaaS applications, it's single sign-on. So whether you're using Okta or Google, you don't have to duplicate credentials. Now, going into it on the right-hand side, this is the homepage, sorry. And on the right-hand side, currently in the policy management module. Policy portal we'll get onto later, but just want to give you a quick view of the interface. Now, the first challenge that I want to talk about is the governance risk that I spoke about just before. So not having a standardized way of governing policies from team to team, from office to office, leading to inconsistency and sort of needless complexity. So Clausematch solves this in one swoop with this thing called, well, this notion of templates. Now, templates doesn't sound particularly cool, but there's three things that a template does, which enforce a lot of automation and ensure that governance is standardized. So, for example, if I go to the group policy template, so this itself isn't a policy, but it's a template. So any policy that gets married with this template, it's going to inherit those three characteristics that I just said before. And those three are the look and feel. So your logo, whatever font you like, whatever font size, whatever format, first and foremost. Secondly, the workflow, which is probably the most important part from a governance perspective. So if I show you what this looks like, any policy that is married to this template, they're going to have the same amount of days in draft, same amount of days in review, approval, validation, etc. This way, there's no deviation from the best practice laid out in the framework. Thirdly, the metadata. So usually policy inventories, they're kept in spreadsheets and maintained that way. With Clausematch, you're bringing this behind the scenes within the platform. So filling in typical information like who the document owner is, what the jurisdiction is, which is obviously quite important for the topic today, and also what the document type is it a procedure, is it a policy, etc. But having all this information in the system, it makes policies searchable and reportable. But templates, they really help to enforce a structured policy framework so that minimum standards are met and there's no deviation across different jurisdictions or teams. Now, when it comes to searchability, that's pretty important because as you move into new jurisdictions, new markets, you're likely going to have increased headcount, and that means more policies. And as a result, more policies to find, and that can be quite difficult if you're using copious different SharePoint sites. With Clausematch, we have an advanced search capability which solves this on the right hand side. So if I was to go into the filters here, I can filter by jurisdiction. So get there eventually. And let's make that jurisdiction the UK. And let's add another one for document type. Well, obviously, we're going to make that a policy. Oh, I have to do that again. 1 second. So this way, you're easily able to identify per office, per jurisdiction, what policies are there, so that employees and also the back-end compliance team alike are easily able to find those policies, making it quick and easy to do. And then this is just from an outside perspective. Let's actually jump into a policy and see what that looks like. So let's pick on the global sanctions policy. So one of the key difficulties that we commonly hear is compliance teams trying to maintain child-parent relationships between policies. So ultimately, they're finding it hard to track and identify conflicts and changes from a local to a group policy. Now, with Clausematch, we have this other notion of modifications, which allows you to see all of the changes and conflicts between a group and a local policy. So having clicked on the modifications bit at the top, ideally you would have global sanctions UK, France, Italy, whatever jurisdictions you're part of. But if I click onto the global sanctions one for the UK, view original, this is going to show me the side-by-side of the UK global sanctions policy and the group global sanctions policy. And if I go and show changes here, you're able to flick through all of those changes and those associated conflicts as well. That way, the local version is always singing off the same hymn sheet as the parent for easy evidencing and tracking. But when it actually comes to policy creation, entering a new market, entering a new jurisdiction, you're going to have to create, a whole host of new localized AML policies, global sanctions policy in this case. Now, that's a huge time burden in itself, having to circulate that across the team, the board, get everything approved. Now, all of that contingent information, like why is this change made, who made it, and when, that's a hefty time burden to try and document and record. With Clausematch, this is all pretty much automated. So if I, for example, go down to the introduction paragraph here, in fact, let's use the overarching group. There we go. So if I say make a change, that's going to automatically feed into the document activity audit trail on the right-hand side. That way, all document edits, reviews, and approval is captured. So this makes evidencing for QAs and new regulators quick and easy. So eliminating that low value admin that it seems that a lot of compliance seem to be stuck with. And as a result, growth is compliance led. And another big challenge is when it comes to mapping between policies. So if I go to the connections icon here, typically you want to show traceability from, a local policy to a group policy to a regulation. And with Clausematch, you're able to create dynamic relationships from a paragraph to a paragraph, or a paragraph to a document, or a document to a document, so that if there's a change made in a certain paragraph or a document, all other related document owners get notified of that change so that they can assess the impact of that change and decide whether to do something with it or not. So as an example, if I click on this part of paragraph here, that directly links this paragraph to this part of the money laundering regulation. That way, it's very, very easy to evidence at a granular level how you're meeting local regulations. This is just a local standpoint, though. There is a way to see this at a holistic frame as well. So if I take you out of the document and go to the compliance dashboard here you're able to see the downstream and the upstream relationships from, for example, money laundering regulation to the policies to the procedures. Now, this dashboard is entirely configurable. Ideally, from your perspective, you would want local policies here, group policies, and regulations. This way, you're easily able to show those relationships and the traceability from regulations, and also perform ad hoc gap analysis. And then the last thing that I want to show you on the policy management module itself is the reporting capability. So getting oversight of policy status during their review cycles is pretty difficult, and obviously it makes it harder to oversee and track as more policies are, more policies are released into new jurisdictions or for new markets. So if I go over to all the policies here that are approaching due in the next 60 days, because of the idea of metadata, which I previously spoke about, all of that policy inventory information has been fed in to the platform on the back end. So I can then filter by location and jurisdiction, and then go to a chart view of this to show you exactly what this looks like across each jurisdiction. This way you're able to track how the team is performing at putting together new policies, making sure that they're on track with expansion plans as well. And maybe some teams require upskilling if there's been missed deadlines or extra support. So that's the policy management module. If I then go in to show you the policy portal, the one thing that I want to show you here, so just to rephrase, this is where all of your published documents go. So this is where they go to where you can create attestations for new employees in a new office or new starters, etc., and also measure adherence and how they've interacted with that policy. So reporting on policy adherence over email is pretty time consuming and doesn't provide much depth other than, well, yes, I've understood, and having to try and put that into a report based on emails is pretty difficult and time consuming. So if I then take you to reports here and reports by policies, and I even go down to location, you can create these folders, configure them however you like. Of course, APAC's relatively broad because that takes in a number of different countries, but you can do it on a country level as well. But here you're able to see who's missed policy deadlines, who's hit them, who was late in reading and understanding them. And also you can interact with the graph, see exactly who's missed them, and you can give them some encouragement. But the real beauty of this is being able to identify the differences in attitudes for compliance across different jurisdictions, and therefore helping to drive a more unified approach to compliance in the business to drive better awareness and engagement. But that's pretty much it for how the Clausematch platform helps to provide better alignment between group and local policies and making sure that you're in line with regulatory demands. But happy to take any questions if there are any. Appreciate it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but you know exactly where I are if you want to get into a bit more depth with this.
Hi, Ted. We have had a few questions come in throughout the session, so I will just kickstart with the first one, which is, what type of documents can you upload? Is it only Word documents?
Yes, so when it comes to uploading documents, docx format is the way to get them uploaded. Our professional services team do a lot of the heavy lifting when it does come to that, though. And maybe just to broaden out that question as well, you can, of course, we would prefer you to create them within the platform. Therefore, it's, well, easier from there. But I appreciate as you're starting to get the ball rolling and using Clausematch, then yeah, docx is the preferred way.
Thank you. And another question is, does Clausematch provide the local regulations for new geographies?
So, complete transparency, we aren't a horizon scanning tool, so they won't come pre-populated. That'll again be the job for professional services to upload those depending on the geography, of course. But yeah, as part of the implementation, there's a lot of enablement that's provided through workshops to ensure that everybody within your team or whoever's adopting the platform are well up to speed with how to upload from there on.
And then the final question that we have at the moment is, how does pricing work for Clausematch?
So pricing is pretty straightforward. It's on a per user basis. That it's not a case on document uploads. It's all down to the amount of users, and it can be done in plenty of different ways. It can be like per function. It can be at a group level. It can be at a local level. So pricing can be pretty flexible depending on what your needs are.
Great, thank you for that. If we do have any more questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or the chat box for Ted to answer. I actually can't see any more coming through at the moment. So I guess we shall end it there. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out at Ted, either via LinkedIn or email, or you can reach out to Clausematch as well, and we will pass you on to the right person. So we'll go and conclude today's session. Thank you everyone for joining, and just to let you know and keep you in the loop, we also have a cracking the code how to embed data security into your organization webinar on the May the 24th. So if you would like to join us then, feel free to head over to our website and register your place, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. So thank you, Ted, and speak to everyone soon.
Yes, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.